Hi, everybody, and welcome back to episode 3 of a little series that Geoff Thompson and I coined the phrase, two ordinary boys living extraordinary lives. And if you want to go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2, you will discover that actually the extraordinary is no different from the mundane. It's just that Geoff and I have had the privilege of calling on love and the power of unconditional love into our lives to enable us to enjoy a whole new dimension of living. Geoff, I think, is one phrase that you've coined in class. Geoff is the author, a BAFTA winning writer, by the way, and if you want to check him out on Wikipedia, there's a full list of all the plays and films and books, Geoff, that you've written over the years. Your latest is called The Divine CEO. And the coincidence, serendipity, if you like, of this is that you and I are both being published on the same day, July the 31st, 2020. You with The Divine CEO, and we with my book, The Secret of the Alchemist, uncovering the secret within Paulo Coelho's novel, The Alchemist, which was published 27 years ago. For those of you who haven't caught up yet, in episodes 1 and 2 of this series, we actually, Geoff and I, are comparing experiences throughout our own personal journeys of transformation, where we have deliberately made choices, Geoff, which we've found has been significant for us to make the choice to become our true selves, rather than try and pretend to be somebody else. The irony is, of course, that sometimes when we try and be our better self, things just get worse. There's no shortcut here. You can't just wake up one morning and say, well, I'm not going to be hateful anymore. Oh, I'm not going to be violent anymore. Oh, I'm not going to be jealous anymore. And just intellectually give it your best shot.
Well, we create covenants with those habits. And in order to break those covenants, we have to oust them. We have to get rid of them out of our psyche. And they've been squatting there a long time. They don't give up their sovereignty easy. Krishnamurti would say that we've had these for tens of thousands of years. They're in us, they're in our genes. So they don't give up their seat easily. So we do have to go to war with them, as you've said yourself. In Islam, they call it the greater jihad, the internal fight, not to defeat our ego, but to win our ego back, because the ego in Judaism is considered the lower soul. It's just lost its sovereignty. When it wakes up, it realizes it's without sovereignty and has to win it back. So that's exactly the process we're talking about. Yeah. So we've met extraordinary people on the way that have enabled us to do that. That's what I was going to ask you, because I'm a little bit jealous that you met Paulo Coelho, who I'm a big admirer of myself. So I would love to hear about that.
Okay. I do tell this story at length, of course, in my book, The Secret of the Alchemist, and everybody listening, if you'd love to go to Amazon and type in The Divine CEO, Geoff Thompson, and pre-order a copy there, and the same for The Secret of the Alchemist, Colm, Holland, excuse me, and pre-order a copy there, we'd be thrilled, because we want to get the word out. If you want to recommend those books based on what you hear today in our other episodes, please be our guest, because the more people who are aware of what it is we're trying to say, the more together we're going to be able to change the world around us. And I guess that's what happened for me, as you said, when I met Paulo Coelho. Let me just give you a bit of background. It was 27 years ago. It was 1993. I'm giving my age away now. I was 40 years old at the time. Now you're supposed to say, oh, Colm, you couldn't possibly be that long ago. You don't look old enough.
The amount of energy you've got, I don't know that you're not 20.
So
you're really impressed with your output. You have massive energy.
That's alchemy for you. So I'll talk about that. I actually do believe in the elixir of life. Yeah. And there are choices that we can make about our lifestyle and the way we think and the way we behave and the things we eat and the things we do that make a difference to the energy we have. But I met Paulo when nobody had ever heard of Paulo. So I know that's a hard thing to think about, but before 1993, Paulo had only ever been published. He published a couple of books in Brazil. His first language is Portuguese. He'd never been translated into English. His book, The Fable, The Alchemist, was published reasonably successfully in Brazil. And I was working at the time for a publishing company called HarperCollins. And I was in the Sydney office, Australia. And it was my job to decide how many copies of individual books that came in to the business from other parts of the company. In this case, California, were planning on publishing The Alchemist in English. And my colleague sent me, in the days before the internet and PDFs in the mail, I got a physical manuscript on my desk and stapled to this manuscript by this guy I'd never heard of, Paulo Coelho. Who's that? Nobody had ever heard of him. There was this book called The Alchemist, and it was in English. And if you Google the original cover of The Alchemist, it's not the color that we get now. So this is this sort of orangey color. You can see this is one of my oldest editions I've got here, well loved and well manhandled. But the original cover was purple, and it had this drawing of a shepherd boy with his crook, obviously going on a journey. And there in the center of the image was this Arab dressed figure with the all-seeing eye of God on his forehead. And that image, they say you should never judge a book by its cover, but that image made me put that book in, that manuscript, in my briefcase and take it home, because my colleague hadn't attached any notes. He didn't say, oh, Colm, you must read this book. It was just in a pile of other manuscripts. So I chose it because of its cover. And Sunday afternoon, it was on the weekend. Normally I didn't do any work on the weekend, but I remembered, and I really felt prompted to let the kids carry on playing whatever it was they were doing, and just to go and sit, and I was just going to skim read this manuscript by this unknown author who I'd never heard of. And as they say, the sun literally set on the last page as I finished the book in that afternoon in one sitting, and my life's never been the same since. And I know lots of other people can say that. I had a knowing. I'd been on a spiritual journey. I was at that point, middle age, quite normal. I've been successful. I had a successful publishing career. I had a great family. I loved my wife, loved the kids. It was all good. And I was at that stage in life where you can sort of start to just, sit back and think, oh, well, that's it. I've arrived. There's nothing more for me to do. Now I've just got to plod along. Don't have any great expectations. Hope I get some grandkids one day, maybe. Maybe I'll get promoted again at work. But you know what? I was really miserable. I was very discontent. I had this big but going on in like you described in one of our earlier episodes. I had this, there's more to my life. I just know there's something else I should be doing. I've no idea what it is. I had some rough plans in the buried deep dreams that I completely squashed, like maybe starting my own business, maybe going out on my own and doing some, really successful things. But I buried all of those. But I read this book, and this book called The Alchemist said, if we believe in our dreams, then all of the universe will conspire to make those dreams come to pass. And I had never thought about my dreams. And by the way, when I mean dreams, not just sleep dreams, but also ambitions, aspirations, and plans. I actually think, those two things are wedded very closely in the unconscious. When we desire to do something, it's coming from a buried place within our unconscious, and quite often is placed there in the first place by love itself. So I thought this book was amazing. And on the Monday morning, I rang my colleague in California and I said, hey, listen, Greg, I really think we should push the boat out on this. And he said, how many copies do you want for Australia? Thinking I'd probably say 5,000 or something. I said, I want 200,000. And he said, are you drunk? I said, no, it's Monday, Geoff. It's like Monday afternoon, I'm not drunk. And he said, serious? And I said, yeah, you better talk to the rest of the guys around the world and see what everybody else says. But it's more than a hunch. I just have this, I just know this book's just going to explode. he said, "Hey, well, that's a lot of copies, though. We could go broke, if they don't sell." And I said, "All right, well, I'll leave the final decision with you, but that's my take." And the rest is history. So The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho has sold 85 million copies plus around the world. For years, he held the Guinness Book of Records for the most copies of any book ever in the history of publishing sold during anybody's own lifetime. It's only ever been beaten by one other book, which is J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And that's interesting too, because both of those books are on the same subject. They're both about alchemy.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that in a moment. Anyway, we were lucky. We were very fortunate. We invited Paulo to come to Australia, which he did. And he did his first literary festival in English, which he was very nervous about because English is not his first language. But it went down like a house on fire. It was fantastic. The queue went round the block, literally outside the building, for people wanting Paulo to sign a copy of The Alchemist. And the book had only been out 9 months. And it was already selling hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And on his way home to Brazil, this brings me to the bit of the story that you want me to tell you about. He said, "I want to visit Colm, and I want to take Colm and his wife and Naomi, our publicity manager, and her assistant out for a meal, just the 6 of us." Paulo had his wife, Christina, with him. And that was a real shock, because normally it would be the managing director and the deputy director and the marketing director and all the dignitaries of the publishing company would all want to get in on that. But this guy was unknown, and he didn't want them there. And he said, "No, I just want you guys there, if that's okay." So we went off. He came to Sydney. We went out for the evening. Beautiful restaurant. In fact, I've got a photo here of the restaurant. For those of you who've never been to Australia, you're going to have to wait a bit now. It was called the Waterfront, down by Sydney Harbour Bridge. So there it is there, a real tourist trap. And we had a wonderful evening, and it was just, special. And in the towards the end of the evening, Paulo said, "Oh, I want to say thank you to you guys for the help and the vision that you've put into my book." And he turned to Naomi and he said, "Look, I asked God and my wife what I should give you." And he pulled out of his pocket this little ring box, and she opened it, and inside was this amazing dressed diamond ring worth quite a bit of money. And she burst into tears. And we all clapped, and she deserved it. She's amazing. She did a fantastic job for every author. But Paulo was the first to really acknowledge his appreciation. And then he turned and looked at me, and I'm thinking, "Ooh, okay, well, maybe a gold Rolex?" No, there's no gold Rolex, guys, just so you know. But how shallow was that, Geoff? I mean, that just tells you where I was at that point in my life. So I'd been on a spiritual journey, but it had just all gone cold, or it was morphing. I didn't really know where I stood with the universe, if for want of a better phrase. I thought I was on my own. I thought I was going to have to dig to the deepest levels of my own, resources to make something happen. And there was lots of fear wrapped around that, which we all face when we step out to try something new. Yeah. And Paulo looked at me and said, "So Colm, I just want to say, I've asked God what I should give you." And of course, it wasn't a gold Rolex. He said, what God told me to do is to spend a day of my time doing my alchemy magic just for you. And I'm thinking, alchemy magic? Well, that's a first. I've never heard of that before, Mr. Skeptic, sitting here, Mr. Colm, the big skeptic. I wonder what that looks like. And then he said, "And so I worked with the universe," he said, "for a whole day. And I asked the universe to move whatever needed to be moved so that whatever you want, Colm, will come to pass. You just need to decide what you want." And that was it. End of conversation. And he said, "Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a lovely evening. Bless you all again. We've got a flight to catch early in the morning. I need to get to bed. See you later." Gone. And that was the last time I ever saw Paulo face to face. And So you can imagine the drive on the way home to, I'm sitting there being really jealous of Naomi and her diamond ring. Not that where was my watch? It's not there. And I said to my wife, I turned to my wife, I was driving along, I said, so, well, really? What did you make of that? And she said, well, it's not what I make of it, is it really, Colm? It's what you make of it. It's what you think just happened that counts.
Very powerful. And
so, cut a long story short, without any effort on my part, this was the weird bit. The two guys who I reported to in the company, in the chain of command, both got offered really good positions in other companies and happily moved on. And to my surprise, out of all the people in the company, I was the one that was promoted up into those roles. And ironically, the more I was rewarded within the company, the more dissatisfied I became, because it wasn't what I really wanted. And those words of Paolo would echo in my ears. You just need to decide what it is you want. And that, everybody, is the beginning of magic happening in your life. We need to drill down. We need to become super honest with our real desires, with our real longings for that better life that we know is ours to possess, that is our birthright in actual fact. And it doesn't matter on the circumstances. It doesn't matter if there's COVID in the world. It doesn't matter if there's a depression in the world financially. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. Almost those things are just lame excuses, in my experience, for us just not taking the courage and to call on all of the power of the universe that wants to assist us to come to our aid to make that happen. So I was, if you read my book, you'll see, I'll go into more detail about what happened, but in the end, I plucked up the courage. I discovered I had a newfound ability to face my fear. And in this case, the fear was financial ruin, of course. I was giving up a well-paid salaried position in a secure position, job for life, pretty much. And I went out and I started my own digital agency in the early days, back in mid-90s. And within 2 years, we were the largest digital advertising agency in Australia, had 85 staff. We ran the Sydney 2000 Olympics online. We ran Channel 7 TV's website. We ran Telstra's website. We ran Toyota's website. It was massive. I mean, it was glory days, actually. And I went into the bathroom, and I'll finish with this note. I remember I was in the midst of this success, and it was a bit like Mad Men without the vices, if you've seen that series. Yeah. And I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, and I had two thoughts. One, my gosh, you've aged. That was the first thought. The second thought was, how did you get here? Can you, come on, Colm, pinpoint what, if you had to put a pin in the map of your life, when was it that this journey, this success began? And I have to admit, it was that night in the restaurant with Paolo.
Great, yes.
So one of the things I've slowly, not immediately, but slowly in the years since then, and my book, The Secret of the Alchemist, is the fruit of this decision I made. So I made a decision that if Paolo Coelho is able to understand how this magic works and to be so generous enough, as it was in my case, to give that gift to me, surely that's something I can learn and something that I can give to other people as well. And I'm very, very blessed to say that that's what's happened in my life. I have discovered I do have that gift. And Geoff, I know for a fact you've got it. All your books are testimony to that, and the life you've lived and the plays you've written, the films you've made, is getting that message out there. And together, this is something that I really feel a kinship with you.
Yeah,
it's ironic that we were born within half a mile of each other and we grew up within half a mile. We never met, sadly. I wish we had, but we were different people back then. And I just want to talk about that a bit, because in your book, the other book, the Notes from a Factory Floor, in in your introduction to that book, you say something really interesting that I've totally identified with, and that was that you say that when you bump into people years later from when they first knew you, which, you know, different stages of your life, you've known different people, you've worked with different people, and they try and converse with you, you get this sense that they're meeting somebody who's got the same name, but it's not the you that they thought. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about those transformative stages, and what's your takeaway from what the hero's journey, you know, is this the norm? Should this be the norm for our lives, that we are constantly becoming the new self?
It's constantly reclaiming old parts of ourselves until we are completely whole. That's the journey. And so for me, I went through lots of different incarnations, sometimes several incarnations in a day, and often, you know, large incarnations over a period of time.
Yeah.
So invariably I would, and that was my expanding consciousness, my expanding awareness of what was possible. You know, this idea of eschatology, which is that everything is already there, we just don't know. And as we switch on different parts of our consciousness, we go, oh, that's there, that's available. I didn't know that was there. It's a lovely story with Cat Stevens where he talks about when he converted to Islam. He said, I used to walk through this park in London every day for 20 years, just a park, nothing special about it. He said, when I converted to Islam, he said, I walked through the park and there was a mosque there. He said, I'm telling you, there wasn't a mosque there before. He said, I can go into the mosque and I can show you the lineage of the mosque and I can tell you that it's been there for a long time, but it wasn't there. Eschatology brings forward or allows you to see a clearer view of what is always there. Potential is always there. So that the idea for me was that as I expanded, as I broke through these terror barriers, as I expanded through these barriers of fear, I just ended up in different rooms with more perspective. But of course, you know, I was a factory worker. I was a comprehensive kid, a factory worker. I was a martial arts teacher. I became a bouncer. I was like a guru for quite a while, teaching around the world. You know, I started to write, so I became a writer. I became a novelist. I became a playwright. So invariably, each of those identities were very solid, but they were all interim truths. They were all interim personalities. So I'd be bumping into people, and I could see by the way they were looking at me that they were seeing that I wasn't who they thought I was. So they were trying to address me at a level of Geoff the factory worker, or Geoff the bouncer, or Geoff the writer. And you'd move each time they were talking to you, they would try to engage you about self-defense. And I'm going, well, that was 10 years ago. That's gone. You know, this it's all gone internal now. So they're trying to talk to somebody that is no longer there. I actually wrote an article called Geoff Thompson is Dead. So obviously we have to decimate the personality in order for the true self to come forward. And part of the reason I wrote Notes from a Factory Floor, and then of course CEO followed it, was that I wanted to say to people, this is my journey. People were still talking to me like I was a bouncer still, or they were still talking to me about Watch My Back. And I've done like, oh, you did that book? I said, which one? Watch My Back. I said, well, I've done another 45 since then. You know, that was a long time ago. How's the doors going? How's the nightclubs? Going, well, I left there 25 years ago. So I was aware that people weren't really aware of who I was. And often a lot of them came looking for Geoff the bouncer, and they were always disappointed because he was gone. All was left was this guy that wanted to hug them and give, let's take for a coffee. Let's talk about love. You know, the bouncer has gone. So I wanted to say, this is the arc of my life, and this is where I am now. And of course, it continues to change as I continue to reclaim parts of me that have been usurped. And that is, each time you reclaim those parts of you, I do it through the writing. So my Aaron's rod, my magic sword is the pen, and I lead these experiences onto the page, and they're cleaned up by divinity. So they're my burnt offerings. And when I do that, it makes it, say for instance, when I wrote Notes, I'd been trying to write the Divine CEO for years. This was my, this last one was my third attempt. This wasn't coming out. I couldn't find it. When I sat down and wrote notes, 150,000 words in 8 weeks, it just poured out of me. I finished on the Friday, and I said to my wife, "No, the Divine CEO's come. I can feel it." I said, "I'm going to start writing it on Monday." I put my book away. I wrote the notes in 15 pads, and I walked to Colm Abbey, and 20 chapter headings for the Divine CEO downloaded in my head. I had to send myself emails so I didn't forget.
Yes.
I started today, and I wrote 150,000 words in another 8 weeks, all handwritten. And it just came out as quickly as I could let it come out. So a lot of the stuff in the Divine CEO, obviously there's lots of stuff in there that's confessional. There's lots of stuff that is autobiographical. But the most profound stuff is stuff that came through me. It didn't come from me. It's not stuff I knew. I didn't really understand eschatology. I didn't really understand the esoteric end of lots of the stuff I'd been studying. And this book showed me it. It didn't just show me it, Colm. It didn't just show me it. After I'd finished writing that, I went through a dark night of the soul, probably 3 months, and that was the residue of all of the stuff I'd written, the confessions, and all the stuff that come through me. I had 3 months. This was last year, of being on my knees. I mean, it was, probably the darkest night of the soul I'd had so far. And it's interesting because I did a talk. I went to do a talk for somebody, and before I went, I had a vision, and I saw myself on stage, and on stage I was huge. I mean, I was like a giant. I remember thinking, and it was literal, people were saying, "God, he's mad, look at the size of him, he's huge." and I knew that was a premonition, but I didn't know, and I knew that meant there would be a kundalini coming, another cleaning, but I didn't know whether it would be a good one, because sometimes I've had bliss and I'm floating for 2 years, and sometimes they sweep you and they bring you to your knees. And this one literally started straight after I finished the talk, and I had 3 months where every single day, without question, was a war. And it wasn't me fighting the war, Colm. Let me just be really honest about that. I wasn't fighting the war. God was fighting the war for me, but I had to sit and witness it. I had to watch all of these, what the Old Testament calls the burnt offerings, the sin offerings. All of that was the residue of all that was coming out of me. And as it was coming out of me, I was having to observe it and not engage it. But there was a part of me that these energies were compelling me to engage them, because of course their life depended on that. So God was cleaning me, and that felt like it was the reward from those 2 books. I had about 3 months of oh man, it was tough. And at the end of the 3 months, I had an intuition: you need to read the Zohar. Now, the Zohar had been given to me as a gift 3 years before. But the 3 years before I was given it, came after another cleansing, and I couldn't look at it. I couldn't even begin to look at it. It came in, it's like 24 books, each one about 600 pages long. And it's the exegesis of the Torah. So it's like if you imagine Kabbalah as a system, and then this was the exegesis and the explanation of the Kabbalah. It's the esoteric end of it. So it said you need to sit and write. You need to sit and read the Zohar. So I got up every day at 5, and I read, I don't know, probably for 4 months full time. My wife laughed because she said I went through 3 bottles of eye drops because my eyes were so sore. So what had been removed from me, I had this huge download, a huge download of energy. And I recognised that every day I sat down, because every day sitting down, I had the most tremendous resistance not to read these books. First of all, because they make no sense, which is good, because that's very devastating to the ego. It wants to understand everything. Yeah. The Zohar tells you at the very beginning, you've got to read this as though it's going straight to your soul, and it's a barcode that the soul will understand, but the ego won't. The ego can't have this. because it's dangerous for the ego. So every day I sat down, my ego was consumed in the act of full-time reading. And it took all of my discipline, all of my years and years of training in being disciplined to sit with the anxiety, to sit with the feeling. And I recognized much later that it wasn't me feeling anxious, it wasn't me feeling depressed, it was my shadow rising up, knowing that it was being usurped. And I had to keep detaching myself from that. So I had 3 or 4 months of this. I was replenished by the Zohar. And again, if anyone's watching, the Zohar comes directly from the Torah. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses, and the 5 books of Moses are, what they say they are the blueprint to the universe. This is the book that got Viktor Frankl through Auschwitz. This was not just the book itself, because at one point when he was in Auschwitz and the book was taken off him, he was told by his inner tutor, we don't want you to read the Torah anymore. We want you to become the Torah. You've got to be the Torah.
Yeah.
So this book, I didn't really understand a lot of the divine seer when it came to me. I understood it as it came through me, which made me a bit nervous because I'm thinking, I've got to go out and talk about this, and I don't really fully understand what I'm writing. But of course, when I started to read the Zohar, and then all the offshoots that I brought loads and loads of other books like the Tanya and some of Rabbi Luria's works, and some of the stuff deeply embedded in Judaism, in Buddhism, in Christianity, in the Gita. All of them were referring to the same thing, and they were all helping to fill the hole that I'd created when I did my birth offering, which was notes. So yes, I had quite a few months of that, and that's something again I'll have to write about at some point. But I'm not quite ready to write about it yet because I'm still stinging a little bit.
So if I could wrap up, we're nearly running out of time again, Geoff. Believe it or not, I can't believe we're on almost to the end of our 3rd episode. It feels like we've only just started, really, this conversation. And maybe if people think this is a good idea, they want us to listen to 2 old boys talking about their extraordinary lives, and they want more, we're quite happy to turn up and share it, because that's what we do. That's our mission. That's why we're here. In the theory of ancient alchemy, and we've talked about 2 stages: the black stage, the white stage. We've both expressed our passing through that, and you've just talked some more, even just now, about black and white stages. The final stage is the red stage in the alchemy process. There are some other colors that other alchemists refer to. The red stage is all about action. And I think one of the things we might want to just inspire people listening, and maybe even, we'll part on this note, which is that everything we've talked about, all of the spiritual exploration, the reading, the ancient influences, the meetings with incredible people, all of those things, they are in themselves of great value. But the ultimate value, the whole point, the raison d'etre, if you like, from this is that the universe gives us these things willingly, generously, more than we even able to receive them, so that we can then become part of the process of nourishing, as the alchemists say in Paulo Coelho in his book, The Secret of the Alchemist, in my book, The Secret of the Alchemist, that we can nourish the soul of the world. And when we become contributors of love, because we've received love, we are enriching the whole of creation, the whole of the universe, material, immaterial, spiritual, mundane, everyday, as well as all the Kundalini moments as well. They're all for a purpose, and that is that together we are one. As the alchemist says, all things are one. And by participating in the journey of transformation, by longing to possess true empowerment, to be able to love unconditionally, we are fulfilling what I believe is our only real obligation in life, and that is to love.
Yeah.
As Jesus said, one commandment I give to you. If you forget all the other things I've ever said, in other words, is what he's saying. But if you can just remember this one thing, that you should love one another, then you've fulfilled your destiny. You are on your path. You are on the road of transformation, because love is everything. It is the beginning. It is the journey. And one day we will discover that it is the end as well of all of our journeyings. And it's the thing that unites us. It's the thing that unites you and me, Geoff. That's the reason we're here today talking, is because we both discovered love, and we want to share that love with
And
those
as we said, remove the things that aren't love. That's the work.
And that's the work, yeah. So
I mean, if you look at Rumi, his poem, he said, love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. He said, birds make great sky circles with their freedom. How do they learn it? They fall, and in falling, they're given wings. So we know that there's going to be kids out there now who have fallen, who are struggling. Yes. That's the door. That's the way in. It isn't something to run away from. It's something to lean into the sharp edges, as the Buddhists say. So the work is to remove everything that isn't God. Remove all the obscurations, so that we can become a vessel, a pure vessel for love. And it's exactly what you said. The moment you do it, everything you need will turn up on your doorstep. The teachers, the books, the information, and of course, God will speak through everything. I remember someone saying to me once, quite pompously, he said, "My God doesn't speak to me through the stars in a Sunday newspaper." I said, "That's a real shame." I said, "Because my God speaks to me through everything."
That's a great note to end on, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody out there, you need to buy the Sunday newspaper and look up your star sign, because I agree.
No way he won't. He'll speak to you through everything.
He'll speak to you through the grain of sand, if you will let it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Geoff, it's been a fantastic pleasure. Thank you so much for giving your time.
Thanks, Colm.
To have this conversation, and maybe, as I said, we will get to have more conversation. If you've enjoyed everything we've talked about, everybody on the podcast listening in, don't forget 2 books, Geoff Thompson's Divine CEO, available for pre-order now on Amazon, and Colm Holland's The Secret of the Alchemist, also available both in ebook and in paperback. You can go and pre-order that anytime, and we will send everybody listening our deepest blessings, and may love be with you. May you know that love is with you. And until next time, thanks everyone.
Thank you.